În încheierea prezentărilor din această seară, îl invit pe domnul Håkon Iversen din Norvegia, specialist în planificare strategică, design urban, arhitectură, urbanism, consiliere strategică pentru sectorul privat și public, director și partener la David Locke Associates Nordic. Până când domnia sa se pregătește, trebuie să vă anunț și câteva dintre evenimentele din zilele următoare. Mâine dimineață va avea loc concursul de arhitectură Trond Tistad, apoi în 16 și în 17 workshop urban Gaming Simulation cu doamna Paula Riții, în 18 workshop Comunicare cu Anca Dinu, în data de 16 concursul Orașul Râul Apa, simpozion de arhitectură și urbanism coordonat de Dan Clinch. De asemenea, juriul Bienalei a ales deja cele mai bune proiecte din cadrul premiilor Bienalei de Arhitectură Transilvania. Acestea vor fi acordate pentru categoriile arhitectura locuinței, arhitectura dotărilor comunitare și de producție, arhitectura spațiului public, cea a patrimoniului cultural, a spațiului interior și scenografiei, microarhitectura, proiecte culturale, inițiative, experimente și arhitectura în mediul rural. De asemenea, vor fi acordate mâine, de la ora 17 la Teatrul Național din Cluj-Napoca, premiile pentru cel mai bun articol despre arhitectură, premiul pentru cea mai bună poezie pe tema arhitecturii din cadrul concursului Poemele Locuirii.
So, guys, are you tired? Well, it's so fascinating. Hopefully I can manage to keep your interest for at least 20 more minutes. I'll be pretty brief. My background, I'm an urban designer as a background. I also do interior architecture and I also do architecture, conceptual design. It's a wide range of things that I do. I have to run very shortly through my history of design so that you can understand the things that I'm going to talk about. When I got back from Sydney in 2004, after doing my master's in urban design, I realized that in Norway, urban design is not an acknowledged profession, so I didn't get any jobs. I haven't been employed anywhere at all. I've always done stuff for myself. So in that manner, I have basically created my own workplace. And I also created my own projects. And that has, to some extent, also defined what kind of projects that has been done. In 2004, I was a little bit fed up that urban design was not an acknowledged profession because we actually need that in the Nordics. So what I did was that I called up Rob Cohen. Rob Cohen, he is Mr. Dictionary of Urbanism. In 2004, he was the director of Urban Design Group in England. And he has written so many books about urban design, urban planning, architecture, and he's campaigning a lot of projects in the UK at the moment. So what happened, I traveled over to London and I presented the idea about NUDA and the conferences and how I wanted to advocate urban design and promote urban design in the Nordics. And he said, yeah, go for it. This is good. I'm going to support you and Urban Design Group is going to support you. So they did. So in 2006, I had the first conference, Cities of Tomorrow, kind of old traditional theme. And I have had now the recent 9 years of NUDA, more than 10 conferences, international conferences. I have brought together more than 90 international keynotes from 50 companies from 30 countries. And I've done several summer schools, academies, workshops for the municipalities, students, architects, etc., etc. Everything in the name of urban design, right? But that was before I met this guy, Fred Kent, from Project for Public Spaces in New York. Now that was a game changer for me. Because when he has said, never heard about placemaking, huh? Well, looking at all the stuff that we actually did a jury on yesterday, the experimental work, which is magnitude, that is placemaking. And PPS, Project for Public Spaces in New York, they have done more than 3,500 projects globally. They are huge. And the way that he talks about architecture and how architecture is more an object, and the way that we discussed architecture and place basically changed my attitude towards what architecture is all about, because I come from a very strong design background. So, even though this period of 9 years has basically redefined or defined the way and where I am at the moment, I still love doing this kind of projects. Now, this is a concept called World Village of Women's Sports. It was initially established in Malmö in 2009. It was supposed to be built. It was a competition that was won by big architects. They did a design similar to that. Now, David Lock Nordic owns the concept now, and we are redefining the concept through a study. So what I did, I took the design of Big Berg Ingels and I improved it. And the other thing was that we had to have a case study, and what better to do Milton Keynes in the UK. Our office, headquarters is here. This is a shopping mall. The stretch from this corner to here is almost 1 kilometer. It's one hell of a big shopping mall. Milton Keynes was built in the beginning of the 60s, and it is based on a very strict grid. It's built for cars. All the discussions that we have had concerning Milton Keynes has been very difficult, because that's holy ground. So when I did this, the chairman of the board got a heart attack. He still haven't presented this for the municipality. Now, this is a case study, it's a possibility study that I basically just fit into Milton Keynes. I do houses. So I jump from the big scales to the small scales to the interiors. We have a company in Sweden that is called Modern Homes. We build the houses that we design. So we actually do our own design, and then we push it out in the other hand. And I also prepare the interiors, so I work all the different details. This is another project. This is Bergen. I've been so fortunate to have a customer for nearly 8 years, which is one of the major property owners in Bergen. They own this shopping center, a shopping center here. They own this. They now own this, and they own 350,000 square meters of business area in Bergen altogether. Now, in 2011, they asked me if I could do a possibility study or a study on a hotel, 180 rooms in a very small plot. So I did this, extension of the quarter, which is this spot here. It's up for the political discussion, so hopefully it will be a tender soon. Another project at the other shopping mall that I have is, they called me up now 6 months ago to do a design for a 5-floor internal bar, restaurant, and cafe. So what happens is that I did the design, and it actually got the best view in the city. So the tender application is up now. Hopefully we will build that ready by next summer, so we can actually sit on top of here. So if people come to Bergen next summer, hopefully we can sit on top here. This is another project that we do in Voss. It's an hour drive from Bergen. That's a kind of rehabilitation project. Now, he wanted to get more apartments in. So what I did was create 2 more floors and redesigned a new total facade on it. This perspective doesn't actually do the best of the quality of the project, because there are some different angles on it that are really good, that you can really catch all the viewpoints of the mountains around. So, that's a short part of the story. Now I'm going to talk about the story. It's about the stories. I think that all projects that we as architects and planners or conceptualizers need is a story, because the story brings a content to a project. And I'm going to use the project that we are doing here in Cluj, which is the Ethnographic Open Air Museum. It's going to be finished now in April, our plan. So the rest of the presentation is going to be leaping back and forth on doing there, where I apply a lot of my thoughts and methods to that. So why is it about the stories? Well, the thing is that cities today, they are competing against each other. And they are competing for the same brains, the same economy, the same tourists, everything. And a lot of cities, they have thought that, well, the only way that we can actually cope with that is to make iconic architecture, like the Guggenheim in Bilbao, like the Sydney Opera House, or for instance, the Turning Torso in Malmö. And they do something with cities as icons, as objects, that's for sure. They can create a brand like they did in Sydney. But the thing is, or the paradox, is that the same 3 buildings are also the worst of its sort. The reason why is that they are objects that are beautified, but they don't work for the public. So, that's why I'm talking more of taking architecture to architecture of place. Hey, what happened? Okay. This is the Opera House in Oslo, done by Snøhetta. Now, this is a project that really understands what architecture is about, because it includes people. It combines public space and architecture into one. And that's why we're talking about architecture of place. And it also tells a story about the landscape, the history of Norway. And for us, or for me, storytelling becomes or moves architecture from an object to a place, and becomes also essential for the work that we're doing. Fredkin says it, it's magical how people know what to do with a place. Put people into a place and they will define place. They will use place how it is, it doesn't matter what's there. If you have a couple of chairs, they will gather around in a group and they will sit there and they will define place. So people, you can't forget people. They are the essential part. So if you don't combine architecture, design, wood, place, and people, you're missing out. And that's where memories come, because memories is something that we carry along every day. All right? We have memories. A lot of the problems for architects, urban designers, planners, designers, is the ability or the lack of ability to communicate that. So, for me, maybe the best way is to use the 3 words. Francois mentioned that earlier in his presentation. The past, which can be a source for inspiration and knowledge. The present is a bit schizophrenic, because you actually don't know what the present is, because the present is always leaping back to the past, and you always have to be relevant for the past. The future can be seductive, sexy, because that's something that we long for. We want to be in the future, but we need the past and the present to reach that level. So how can we do that? How can we apply the concept of the past, the present, and the future into our project for the Ethnographic Museum? That's where stories come in. We need to tell stories. We need to tell the stories that the museum have. And they can be the source for new. I'll give you another example of another project that we have. This summer or this spring, our company bought 3 golf fields in Malmö. So what we're doing now, we are totally rebranding or restructuring the golf fields, 3 golf fields, into one. Rönnbäck, which is this one. And I'll just skip a little bit here. This is Rönnbäck. Malmö is over here. The transit line goes here. Oxie is a small suburb. And the second golf field is here, and the third one. So we're going to make a plan for doing this now. We're presenting it for the municipality now in November. The thing is that if you go back to this, situated very close. Now this looks like Tuscany, right? If you stand on this hill, this ridge is only 40 meters high, and turn your head around, you get this view. The view toward the turning torso, the urban structure. Feels like far away. The way we approach the project is telling a story. We define a story that becomes the backbone of the whole project. It feels like close, but it is far away. But you have everything within a 10 minutes distance. So we try to apply that to the museum. And the other thing is that we have to make sure that it is a museum that can generate new ideas. We have to define it as a museum because it is a museum. Even though the core aspect of the project is about the painting, the restorations of the painting and the restoration of the churches, the problem is that it's inside the churches. And if the restoration is to have any value at all, we need to attract people. This doesn't attract that many people. So our aim is that the museum needs to become the storyteller. It needs to advocate the stories. It needs to promote the stories. It needs to be the stories. And by doing that, I always look to inspiration. I think that the best things that inspire me are the architects, are the designers, are the people. I use their inspire. I become like a pitch on them, and I draw them up. This is the Metropole Parasol from Sevilla. A friend of mine, the German architect Jürgen Mayer, did this. And I'll just show you a video that basically explains it. It's only 2 minutes, so it's not that long. Turn up the sound. think that this is a project that combines the past, the present, and the future in a very sensible way. Because you got the new technology. This is all wood. You have the old city square, and under there you have a Roman structure. So it's a museum at the same time, but at the same time maintains the public space area. And it's a completely different organism compared to the heritage items that is around. And another project, this is the last one I'm going to talk about, and another project is the Federation Square in Melbourne. I don't know if you've heard about it, but that's a structure that was won by a company called Studio Lab Studio. And Peter Davidson, who is one of the principal designers behind that project. I met him several times and we discussed that earlier. The thing is with the Federation Square is that from this point it looks pretty messy. But as an architectural object, it is more an architecture of place because of the people. It's become a success story that I think that you, Miriam, can talk about and mention. And they didn't actually expect that, because Melbourne has, as you mentioned yesterday, Melbourne had tried for several years to establish a square inside the city, but have never been able to do that. And suddenly this project comes up and it becomes the new square outside the city grid. So again, it's all about people. And where's the people? We need people. Now, even though the main objects of the project is the churches for the restoration, Joshua says architecture is by definition a very collaborative process. That's for sure. That's why we need people and activities like this to embrace those two projects together as one. And we have to have in mind that this is a museum. It's a constructed entity, right? And it's pieced together by different parts, by different structures. And one of them is the kind of aspiration that you have from the Casparian mountains. How do you pronounce it? Carpathian mountains. That's right, the sprawl of objects. And if you can combine that with the density of structures from a small village outside Bergen in Norway, then some immediate thoughts pops up, which will be laying the grounds for some guidelines that we are working on for the project. And one of them is structure the sprawl of buildings, create a logic pattern of connectivity inside and outside, establish a feel of authenticity so it doesn't become a kind of Walt Disney theme park. That's very important. It's a very subtle design that needs to be established as part of the project. And then make it a business case of importance. Because one of the major things that is forgotten when they do such things like this is business. It needs to sustain itself economically. If they don't have a plan for that, it's going to fail. And architects, urban designers, planners again, they don't think business. So my observation about the potential value increasing changes actually starts here. The plot, it doesn't start with the plot, but it starts with a walk. Because the site is a little bit off skirts, it's lying top of a ridge, and it's not that well established with infrastructure and public transportation. So actually we have to create a kind of walk path where you have the story of Cluj up, takes approximately 20 minutes to get up there. When you enter the point, immediately you find the three churches aligned inside, okay? They are scattered around. You see how the buildings are sprawled around here. And whenever I access a kind of different site, the first thing I always look for are the access points, escape points, if you want, or entry points. When I find them, I can triangulate the project and I can define a core where the planning should happen. And of course, The main line, that's the spine of the project. You're not going to ruin that, so you have to develop on what already exists. We see immediately that there are different zones. Within different zones, you have different objects or buildings or structures or possibilities or opportunities. And we use these opportunities to become the framework for guidelines for phases of development. And this is back again to business and economics. So we need to rebrand the identity of the museum. That's a task. It's a big task. And for doing that, we need some inspiration again. This is Bryggen in Bergen, a UNESCO heritage. This is the destination point #1 in Bergen. Everyone goes there. Everyone. And it's self-sustained. It contains shops. It contains cultural events, bars, clubs, etc., etc., within that limit. And it's strong on stories. The history of the Hanseatic period is extremely strong, and it's well preserved in the project. The other project is this one, Hamar Cathedral, outside of Oslo. And it was in a magazine, I can't remember the name now, it was selected as one of the world's most beautiful outdoor museums. Now, this is also a combination of the past, present, and future, where technology and architecture embraces the project, or the ruins. And this is also a place where people come, activities. There's a fixed program for it. That's why it can manage to sustain itself. So what makes these two destinations a destination? Well, strong storytelling, that's one thing. Architecture is more than an object. Activities and self-contained. Education and history, you can involve that through activities. Well-planned and maintained. Good logistics inside. It has to be easily movable and accessible. Light, I use light. I could talk hours about light design and the importance of that, but I'm just going to mention it here. Signage, you need signage. And then, of course, the business case, which is very important here. So, ideas for bringing a village to life. Well, it needs some color, of course. It needs some people, it needs some activities. It needs an incorporation of history, art, through practical events. And it needs a master content plan. Not a master plan, but a master content plan. I don't like the word master plan because it's basically just without content. That's what we do. We fill a master plan with content through content programming. And that's way different from what urban designers, planners, and architects do. We provide the village a content, because without the content, the village will never sustain. So, first, okay, we need someone to facilitate the content and the program. Well, that's an administration building. Show and education center could be something. Activities up, events up, landscaping and design. It needs to be a part of the project, of course. Improved and well-planned logistics, light, signage, and technology, connected and integrated. Progress plan, bringing the master plan to life. Short, finalized master plan brief. Time of activities. Challenge. Now this is the most important part, because there's always policies attached to heritage items and projects, which makes it very difficult. So we need to challenge the policies. And outline potential develop phases, improve connection to city. And the final one is a part of our marketing strategy for the project. I'm going to do a presentation tomorrow morning for another gang, just for the project. But we want to introduce an international competition. What happened? Okay, it's a good L. International open air museum competition. And I think, by my knowledge, that will be the first one in the world. And that's a part of our master plan. I will describe that more tomorrow. So, ending up. I think most of you architects have read this. We shape our buildings, and thereafter our buildings shape us. architects and planners and designers, especially architects, they have a responsibility to shape the environment and the buildings around them, because you're actually shaping each one of the people using them. Thank you.